Welcome back. In the last episode, we talked about the suspects in the Charlie Kirk Incident, the symbolic meaning they portrayed, and how everything continually leads us back to 9/11. We will now continue our investigation. The rifle itself, the alleged murder weapon, posed an entirely different problem. Why use an ancient bolt-action rifle instead of a modern assault rifle, like all the other manufactured shootings? Up to this point, the media and the left continuously try to demonize guns by claiming that certain guns look mean, that they look too military, with high-capacity magazines or drums and folding stocks. Newsflash: most successful guns began life in the military. When something goes against their typical narrative, it's because the rifle itself was meant to be part of the message. The rifle allegedly used by Tyler Robinson is supposedly a Mauser Model 98, which was based on the original German design that entered service for the German military in the year 1898, hence the 98. Since this model was chambered for .30-06 instead of 8mm, it was likely a post-war Belgian model, even though it was being sold to the public as coming from the war. I simply cannot fathom the Germans deliberately chambering it for .30-06, but perhaps they did. Either way, this little fact is important because it directly references an Americanized version of a German creation. The .30-06 is a popular cartridge in America, and it was introduced in 1906 for the United States Army with the Springfield rifle. It's a difference of 8 years between the chambering and the rifle itself, thus once again linking the aspect of time. This is important. I also believe that this difference of an Americanized version of a German creation symbolically references the current United States version of Nazi imperial fascism, since that's what the American empire has devolved into. You see, Nazi Germany didn't die. It merely changed its clothes. Hence another reference to Tyler Robinson changing his outfit. Essentially, the U.S. became the evil that they were fighting in the war. These changes happened subtly over time, like how the battle helmet for the United States military morphed into one that was visually very reminiscent of the German helmets of World War II. The United States has now fully assumed the role of Germany and Japan during the war. This is a natural mirrored consequence because the U.S., as the defeating power in both world wars, had no choice but to assume the karmic debt that now comes due. Every action has an equal and opposite reaction, and every event an equal and opposite re-event, where the roles must reverse. It's now our turn to be thoroughly destroyed. And that directly takes us back to the 98 in the gun's model number. As stated, the gun was introduced in 1898. This was meant to have us focus our attention back to that particular year. But why? Because that's the year of the Spanish-American War. That's the year when the American Empire began, hence the use of a military rifle, which completely mirrors the situation that the death of Charlie Kirk will soon lead us to the point at which the American Empire comes to its end. Beginnings and endings. That war began with the false flag bombing of the USS Maine, which was blamed on an imaginary mine and which was used as a rally cry for war with Spain. Now there's an interesting link between mine and Maine and Germany, and this is not a mere coincidence. While not to digress too much, The Main River in Germany, although spelled like the English Main, is actually pronounced Main. This river, which meanders up and down like a sine wave, serves as a boundary between North and South Germany, representing both political and even linguistic divisions. Thus it was called the Main Line, analogous to the Mason-Dixon line dividing North and South in the U.S. All of these things are linked because they all paint a picture of the true meaning of the rifle's presence in the alleged murder of Charlie Kirk. Quite simply, this will lead to intense division, totalitarianism, war, and ultimately, the end of the American Empire. It is the turning point. Again, those years in the late 19th century represented the point at which everything comes back, the pastime, hence the signage proclaiming the American Comeback Tour and all the baseball hand signs from the security personnel. The focus on those years in the late 19th century is described in much greater detail in Part 6 of my series on the symbolism of Donald Trump, and it's the point at which I hypothesize a divergence occurred in the timeline. Indeed, I stated that 9/11 was brought about by the events which were seeded at that time, around 1888. When coupled with the fact that the weapon was passed down within the family from Tyler's grandfather, it represents a common thread. Essentially, that Model 98 Mauser rifle that was allegedly fired at Charlie Kirk wasn't fired in 2025. It was fired around 1888 to 1898. Of course, the rifle wasn't the only message. Kirk's shooting took place at 12:23, 23 minutes after his event started at high noon. High noon is another reference to time itself, which links us back to sundials like the Washington Monument, which I believe was used to create the cutoff branch of time. Again, see Part 6 of my series on Trump. The 23 minutes introduces another sacred number that links us back to the 23rd president, Benjamin Harrison, who was elected precisely 4 weeks after the Washington Monument went online, directly in between the last instance of 2 non-consecutive terms for a U.S. president, something that Trump has now emulated. Likewise, the USS Maine, which we just discussed, was laid down 8 days after the monument went online as well. Why does this matter? Because as stated above, that's the point in time where I believe the time itself was divided and hijacked. Of course, Charlie Kirk's alleged shooting took place 23 months after Israel's manufactured 10/7 Hamas incursion and their rapacious genocide in Gaza in 2023, an event which Charlie was apparently questioning before his alleged death. And finally, 23 is the 9th prime, and we will continue to see that the number 9 is rife in this event. Notice so far the reference to 1898 in the Mauser rifle, the reference to 1906 in the year that the .30-06 bullet was released, the year 1908 in the year baseball was introduced, and the year 1888 in the year the 23rd president was elected, which led to the first instance of 2 non-consecutive terms for a president. All of these are direct references to time, and specifically a particular period of time, a looping period of time. None of this is coincidental or by accident. It's all part of the message. At approximately 1:11 local time, yes, the time is very important, 48 minutes after Charlie Kirk was allegedly shot, a Bombardier Challenger 300 aircraft, tail number N888KG, left the nearby Provo airport. Many people speculated that the real shooter left town via that aircraft, or perhaps even Charlie Kirk was evacuated by the aircraft. The reason it attracted attention was because, according to flight tracking sites, the aircraft appeared to drop off radar over Arizona, reappearing at Page Municipal Airport in Page, Arizona. Quite simply, what the elite were doing here is hanging a lantern on Page, Arizona, just like they hung a lantern on 1898 with that rifle. They want us to focus on Page for some reason. The first thing we do is look at the definition of page. Well, a page is part of a book. It could refer to the page of a narrative upon which the elite want us to focus. But what narrative and what page? Another meaning for page is a person employed to run errands or deliver messages. This tends to confirm that the aircraft was merely a page sent to deliver a message. But again, what message? Page, Arizona has an interesting history in that it was the home for two of the largest electrical generation units in the western United States. The first is Glen Canyon Dam, which has a 1,288,000 kilowatt capacity when fully online. Notice this is the first usage of the word Glen in the Charlie Kirk Incident. Glen means a narrow valley or dale. We will see this word again in the location of Charlie Kirk's memorial, Glendale, just to the south. In any event, the other power plant to the southeast was the monster Navajo Generating Station, which strangely ceased operations in 2019. It was a coal-fired steam plant with an output capability of 2,250,000 kilowatts. Why such a massive plant was shuttered is beyond me. Clearly, if I am correct about the message from the elite, then the element of removing something from power is important here. And this leads us to the demolition of the 3 towering smokestacks of the power plant on 18 December 2020, 13 days before the end of the year. With this demolition, they essentially recreated the destruction of the Twin Towers and Building 7 from 9/11/2001, compressed to within a minute or so. The first 2 stacks fell, one after the other, while the third endured a profound pregnant pause to allow the other 2 stacks to completely fall and settle. This uncannily mimicked the demolition of Building 7 late in the afternoon on 9/11. Remember, this took place during the year of COVID, itself a massive manipulation of the minds of the masses, not seen since 9/11. Now, look back at the tail number of that aircraft that turned off its transponder, N888KG. Those 3 8s sum to 24. There were 24 years between 9/11 and the Charlie Kirk Incident. 23 years, 11 months, and 30 days to be precise. Likewise, look at the time it took off, 1:11 in the afternoon. This harkens back to those crazy ones on 9/11 that we saw in Episode 5. The events of that day occurred 11 weeks after the start of summer, 11 days before the start of fall, 101 days before the start of winter, and 111 days before the end of the year. And the day that they opened the Flight 93 Visitor Center was 1 year, 11 months, and 11 days, or 101 weeks prior to the 2017 Great Eclipse. We learned that 93 is a trinity of 31s, the age of Charlie Kirk, and 31 is the 11th prime. Those 3 11s sum to a hidden 33. And of course, let's not forget that the UVU campus in Orem, Utah, where Charlie Kirk was allegedly shot, is located at 111 degrees west longitude. We're talking about sacred locations in space and time. Given that this aircraft is linked back to a replay of the 3 towers that fell on 9/11, do you really believe that the takeoff time of 111 was simply an accident, or that the tail number summing to 24 was just an accident? The symbolism simply cannot be ignored. With this event, the elite were telling you exactly what I'm telling you. Charlie Kirk's alleged death leads us directly back to 9/11. But perhaps you are still skeptical that the destruction of those 3 towers is linked back to 9/11. Well, there is one more thing. You see, the address for Tyler James Robinson, the alleged shooter of Charlie Kirk, that is listed in the court documents is 894 West Cimarron Drive, Washington, Utah, 84780. This is in southwestern Utah, close to the border of Arizona. It is also, however, precisely 119 miles away from those 3 towers that were demolished. That number is special because it's a mirror opposite of 9/11. But that's not all. You see, Tyler Robinson's address is 6.79 miles north of the Utah-Arizona border, and the nearest tower of that power plant is 6.79 miles south of the Utah-Arizona border. Mirror locations. Do you really think that this is just a coincidence? If you found this topic interesting, then please check out my other videos and my books. My website is www.mastersofthemirror.com. Thanks.